Welcome to episode 5 of the Glorious Wrestling Podcast, and you can forget Clash of Champions, you can forget Dolph Ziggler possibly retiring, and cardboard cutouts of Randy Orton. The greatest tag team of all time has formed this week, and I am not talking about Sheamus and Cesaro. My name is Nick Negropontis. Damn, are you ready for this?
Nick, I am ready for a perfectly glorious podcast.
Yeah, I guess that's alright. Better than last time. We've had 2 weeks to think of something, and you've thought of it in the last 10 seconds. Anyway, we're going to get straight into today's show with something that happened about 14 seconds ago in terms of what we've been just watching, because we've got NXT on in the background here. The best tag team of all time has just formed. Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode.
Our two main men of NXT have joined forces, and it's one step closer to my prediction from the first show, I believe, where I said that that's the next feud for Bobby Roode, Ty Dillinger versus him. Two Canadians, they've known each other for a while, but this is perfect. Did you hear the pop? The crowd went crazy.
They went absolutely nuts. It was so good. It's just perfect. I mean, we've looked at the spoilers for the upcoming NXT shows, so we sort of know where it's going. If you haven't, we won't spoil it. But the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic is also back. Question without notice: who is winning it?
Well, we don't know what the card is yet. I have a prediction, but we don't want to spoil because it hasn't all been announced quite as yet. I have a prediction. At the moment, I'll just say I don't think it will be a standard tag team. Like, it'll be like the first one where Balor and was it Balor and Joe?
Balor and Joe.
Yeah, Balor and Joe. Well, they're not a tag team, but
Yeah.
they got put together, and it will be something like that, I think.
Yeah, I would honestly rather see the Revival win it. I think it's a title they deserve after the year in this tag team division. What'll be interesting is, like, last year we saw a few main roster guys come back to NXT to compete in it, like Neville and The Ascension. I honestly can't remember because we did look at the spoilers, but I can't remember. Do you think we'll see anyone like that?
Yeah, I can't remember either. I don't think so. You'd hope maybe cruiserweight guys. A couple of cruiserweight guys, that would be good.
I think there is, from memory.
I don't know. Like, I quickly gazed over it,
same.
but you'd like to see Cedric Alexander or Noam Dar. He hasn't even debuted yet.
We'll get to the cruiserweight division later on because we've got a lot to say about that.
Yes, but it would be good to see some of them used in NXT programming, like we saw last week. Who was wrestling? Cedric Alexander
in the main event. Yeah,
and he's unbelievably popular. We'll get to it later, but it would be good to see some cruiserweight guys there.
It's interesting that they've got like Cedric, Rich Swann, and all these guys going straight to Raw, and they've got like a roster of 12 in the cruiserweight division, and NXT's like not even seeing them, only really as part-timers. Even guys like Tony Nese and Drew Gulak who debuted this week. Like,
yes,
I mean,
Tony Nese.
we'll talk about it later, but like, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on to the other tag team that formed this week, Sheamus and Cesaro. I think it was an idea that was floated before Clash of Champions as something that could possibly happen, but do you think it's pretty ridiculous? We had 9 matches between Sheamus and Cesaro. It wasn't 7, it was 9, all delete and then becoming a tag team. Like, I don't really understand why they think that's such a good payoff.
If we can't take it out, but forget about the build-up to it. It was horrible build-up in the end. But I don't mind a Sheamus and Cesaro pairing. I think they could be entertaining. Sheamus is fairly entertaining. If he's a heel that's kind of, starting to respect the other guy but trying to one-up him, and that one-upping, we know that Cesaro is pretty entertaining as well. They can put on some good matches. Sheamus is underrated in the ring, I think, in terms of a power wrestler and what he's done in the company. And Cesaro is obviously underrated, and you'd hope that he'll move to SmackDown eventually, or you want him with a title. We want him with the title, and not just the tag team titles. It doesn't quite make sense to have Slater and Rhino on SmackDown as champions, and then potentially Sheamus and Cesaro. So you expect to see Slater and Rhino drop the titles before Sheamus and Cesaro even. It could lead to like a one-on-one final match where the winner has to leave Raw.
Yeah.
The loser has to leave Raw. But in the meantime, I'm excited to see what they can produce.
I think
they got good chemistry.
They do. They've had great chemistry for years now. I think their matches in 2014 over the United States title were really good as well. But I think you're right that the loser of this eventual feud has to leave Raw because there's just nothing for them. Sheamus if you take out the brand split, and later on I'm going to talk about the wrestlers who benefited most from the brand split, you take the brand split away and Sheamus is probably, in an undercard feud? Probably not even on Raw. Like, that's what I'm thinking here. It has to go somewhere.
He deserves to be. Like, he doesn't deserve to be a low.
No, Sheamus is much better than people give him credit for.
Yeah.
I think that run with the WWE World Championship sort of put people off him because...
Well, you had him as your most overrated, I'm pretty sure.
That was you.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was me.
You had him as the most overrated. I had Brock Lesnar.
No, I had Del Rio.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Mate, watch the show. Anyway, we'll move on to the next thing, which is the fact that Raw is really struggling at the moment, isn't it? I mean, it was the lowest rated non-holiday edition of Monday Night Raw of all time. I think that's a bit unfair considering it was a non-holiday edition, but it went straight up against both the NFL and the freaking presidential debate. So, cut them some slack. But they didn't exactly do a great job of luring people in, considering the main event was, the highlight reel, and Seth was unable to compete. There really wasn't much to tune in for.
Yeah, and it leads on, like, one of my issues later on, where I'll go further in depth into it. But Raw, it genuinely is struggling, and the issue that I'll be talking about, we can say it now, I'll be talking about the booking decisions between Raw and SmackDown, and that's clearly where we're at the moment, where SmackDown's been booked much better. I mean, we'll talk about it, but it is struggling in terms of even head-to-head with itself. Forget that it was with the NFL and the presidential debate. I mean, it's with the NFL every week.
Yeah.
It's not providing a great alternative, even though it's the main show.
It isn't, and like if you look, it's just so obvious. You look at SmackDown and the talent that's on there. It is vastly inferior to the talent that is on Raw, and yet the booking is making it so much more easy to watch. It's just such a clean 2 hours. I think there was only one iffy moment in the entire of the 2-hour show, whereas Raw, I couldn't watch it live, so I watched it later and fast forwarded through probably about 2.5 of the 3 hours. It was just nothing worth watching. I mean, you were, I think it was you, I can't remember if it was you, someone sent me a text last night going, Enzo and Cass are now jobbers.
Yes, I did.
That was you, correct. Yeah, well, there's just no balance on the show. You've got Gallows and Anderson who are being effectively buried now.
Which is just horrible. That booking's terrible. They should have got the titles.
The New Day, and I love the New Day, but they're the only tag team on Raw right now. There is no other tag team in their division because they've all been booked to lose.
Golden Truth.
Where have they been? I mean, I don't care, but
we forgot about them.
Yeah. Then there's the Shining Stars. Nobody cares about them. You got Sheamus and Cesaro who will have the next shot, which means again Enzo and Cass will probably move on to a feud with Gallows and Anderson. But we know that there's just such an artificial feud. There's no heat between them. There's no reason for them to be feuding. It'll just be another, we've got nothing to do with these two guys, put them together.
And it's something I'll discuss a bit later, but it's really strange.
Yeah, I guess we've got to move on to SmackDown now, which, as we've been discussing, is the far superior of the shows. I guess the main talking point from SmackDown is the potential retiring of Dolph Ziggler and how good this feud with The Miz has been.
And I guess, as we have discussed previously on the podcast, and everyone discusses it all the time, the best feuds come from close friends feuding each other. And obviously Miz and Ziggler are close. Everyone knows that, from the same hometown. And that just built it more yesterday, the fact that they were both in their hometown. Miz was talking to Ziggler's parents and all that. You know, we've seen the rumours that Ziggler's contract is coming up, I guess, but that doesn't really mean anything. He can re-sign tomorrow, and he's such a company man, and it leaves us in a situation where we genuinely don't know what will happen, which is, I know you tweeted that out yesterday, and it's true, and that's the perfect type of feud. It's the hottest feud at the moment. It's one of the hottest feuds of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I think it's the best feud of the year, to be honest.
The prestige of the IC title is deservedly, it's right up there, and people are doubting Miz and saying, the Miz is champion, and if the Miz is champion, what's that going to do for the IC title? Well, he has elevated it he's in career best form.
Yeah.
And, Ziggler's got the passionate promos down pat over the last couple of months. It's building up nicely.
Yeah, I think the thing with Miz is all he needed was a chance to show just how good a heel he is.
SmackDown's let that happen.
We saw that in his WWE Championship run, but I think he's gone to a whole new level since his acting career has really been forged over the last few years. he's just gone to a whole new level. And once the spotlight is on him, I mean, there's no reason. I'm worried about where this is going long term. Let's say Miz beats Dolph Ziggler. What happens next? Like, that's the question. Because then Ziggler goes away. Miz doesn't really have a natural challenger after that unless they poach someone from Raw, which they should.
They should get Cesaro, would be.
I'm thinking Sami Zayn or Neville. Because what's the point of having Neville in the Cruiserweight division? There's 15 guys there. Like, he's just going to be another one of them.
That's true.
You might as well use him in the upper mid card of SmackDown. But I think, yeah, Sami or Neville would be perfect. Cesaro's at least got something to do for the time being, even if it's beneath him.
Yeah. So that would build up Sami Zayn nicely, I think.
Yeah, and No Mercy is now just over a week away. What do you think of the card? Like, to me, I think it's already looking as if it's the next logical step up from Backlash, which I think is really intelligent long-term booking, where they've gone, this is where we are at Backlash, this is where we want to be at No Mercy, where I feel like Clash of Champions was almost... It just felt like a pre-draft pay-per-view. It didn't feel any different. It doesn't have any of that new era feel that WWE have been ramming down our throats that SmackDown has delivered so well. Clash of Champions, it just felt like a souped-up edition of Raw, whereas No Mercy looks like a genuinely great pay-per-view from top to bottom.
Yeah, and the quality of wrestling on SmackDown has been much better as well. Storytelling. I wonder if having so many pay-per-views is hurting the quality. It could be an issue of, Raw having... There's every 2 weeks where we've got pay-per-views to watch and all that sort of thing. It's just overwhelming, and they've got to come up with something for every pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build up SmackDown, and in trying to build up SmackDown, Raw is naturally, I guess, decreasing in quality. So it's a delicate one, but what was the next one? We're talking about Orton versus Bray Wyatt, because that's going to be on the card.
Yeah.
And they've built up a solid feud. I mean, I think Bray, I know he loses all the time, but he's still, when he talks, it's still captivating.
Is it though?
I think it's I still think it is, even though he's been made to look silly. I think Randy will win, but I do want Bray to win the feud overall, because Bray needs that push. Bray needs to hold a title, and he needs to hold one soon and have a long run with the title, I think.
There is no real title for him to hold. Unless
the US title would have been okay, I think.
Unless he feuds with Miz.
Which, a face turn for Bray Wyatt at this stage doesn't quite make sense.
See, like, I'll say this now. I've never been the biggest fan of Bray, simply because his in-ring quality, just, like, it's never been at that elite level. I think he's had one match that I would, like, say was very, very good, and that was his match against Daniel Bryan. But then again, Daniel Bryan could do that with anyone. So, I've never been the biggest fan of Bray, simply because his in-ring stuff has never really backed up his words, if you know what I mean. But now, like, if you look at him since he's come to SmackDown, he did nothing for the first month. He was just, helping Ambrose and Ziggler as the heel in that feud. Then he's gone on to this stuff with Orton that had a complete false start, with Orton not being cleared to wrestle. And then we had, him losing to Kane, and then getting punked out by Orton 2 weeks in a row now. Like, he's just been made to look dumb as well as weak. Like, it's just hard to believe anything he's saying. He's calling himself a god. He's calling himself, like, the Eater of Worlds and all this fancy stuff, when in reality he hasn't backed any of those words up. Like, it's hard to get invested in someone when they just don't deliver.
That's true, and I guess that's one of the poorer bookings of SmackDown. I still think when he talks, even though he hasn't backed it up and all that, if you take it on its own, his promos are up there with the best at the moment in WWE.
Of course, but he needs something fresh. He needs
to beat Randy Orton at No Mercy.
Yes, and then he needs to move on to a feud with Luke Harper and turn babyface. I'm calling that right now. That needs to be what is done in order to get Bray back on track.
And a genuine contender for the title, either IC or the WWE World, whatever it's called.
Yeah, turn him face, and then
he can feud with AJ.
Yeah, you can feud with AJ by the end of the year, maybe even Royal Rumble. That would be interesting. So we'll leave it there for our opening segment. We're going to move into Book City now. For those of you who haven't listened to the show before, Book City is where I give Dem a feud off the top of my head.
A stitch up.
An absolute stitch up. I'll make it as hard as possible, and he has to book it without any prior knowledge, and I'll give him a grade based on how well he does, and then he'll do one for me.
Which I do easily.
Well, since you've got one, why don't you go first? Then give me the feud to book.
Sure. It's more of a booking, just a short to medium term booking. We've seen on social media recently talk about an NXT star coming back from injury, a long-term injury, a broken ankle. Book the return of Elias Sampson.
That's actually... I'm not sure if I could say that's easy, because like the easy way out would just say Elias Sampson returns. He gets, added to the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. They lose, him and his partner lose in the first round, and then he goes on to job to anyone above him, which is everyone. I didn't rate Elias Sampson that high. I don't think he had any connection with the crowd. The Drifter gimmick just didn't really work. So it's hard to book something for him when in reality he just seems like he's such an afterthought at this point, and might be used for guys like Cedric Alexander and, Andrade Cien Almas to just get an easy win. So thinking of something for him to do, you need to find someone who he can, connect with. And I think the perfect person for that would be No Way Jose. Considering, the Drifter's like, he plays his guitar, he's all sad and, drifts along, and No Way Jose is the exact opposite of that. So I guess if you're going to have them feud with anyone, that would be the feud to go with. Gives Jose a win, which he deserves. It sounds like something you could have on the Toronto card pre-show, NXT TakeOver Toronto. Not necessarily the pre-show, but like the main event of NXT for that week. I can't really see anything else for him, to be honest. I don't think he's rated that highly. I think a lot of people within the company like him, but this gimmick just doesn't allow him to do anything special. So I'm just going to leave it at No Way Jose versus Elias Sampson.
And I think you've got yourself out of that situation well. I was going to give you a D. Now I'll give you a B.
I'll take that.
I like that with No Way Jose, because, as you said, Jose does deserve a win after losing a couple of matches.
Correct.
And he's doing well. So, good job.
Mate, I know I did a good job. You don't have to remind me. Anyway, I'll get on to yours now. I had to think about this one, so I think I'm giving you a slightly easier one this week. So, book the SmackDown Women's Championship feud for WrestleMania. Go.
That's like the fourth time you've given me a SmackDown Women's. When I'm not 100% sure. I'm not as into the... I'm not a connoisseur of the women's wrestling or well-known, but I think Becky Lynch...
grade you very harshly.
Yeah, Becky Lynch gets through Alexa Bliss, unfortunately. Gets through quite easily.
Yeah.
I think they're building up Carmella to a point where she has to be a logical contender.
Yep.
She's pinned Nikki Bella a couple of times. As you've seen on our Twitter, we sent our kudos to Nikki Bella for taking a couple of pins.
At Glorious WP on Twitter if you want to follow us, because Nikki Bella's mum favorited our tweet. That means you should follow us.
Yeah, that's our claim to fame. So it only makes sense for Carmella to be boosted up into that championship feud next after Alexa Bliss. And then I guess they could probably swap. Alexa Bliss can probably go with Nikki Bella, or there's something there, but you're saying the championship feud, so I'm just going to stick with the championship. Becky Lynch versus Carmella can take us, I guess, over maybe to the end of the year, from whenever it starts to the end of the year, because the Alexa Bliss thing can't just be one pay-per-view and that's it.
You'd hope not.
They have to build it up, so Carmella can be that until even potentially the Royal Rumble, and that's the point where I want to see Emma put on Raw, and then the WrestleMania, like up till WrestleMania, you build up Emma, where she beats all the faces.
Wait, Emma on Raw?
No, Emma on SmackDown.
Yes, you said Raw. Never mind. Go on.
Okay, I apologise for that. We're talking about SmackDown, yes? Okay, you have to build up Emma, and you can do that the same way you're doing it with Carmella at the moment. You can have her beating up everyone. You can feed her. She has to be a heel, and she has to, A, beat people constantly to look like a genuine contender, and B, underhanded tactics. She has to be a genuine heel because she has quality in the ring. And then in doing that, you can have her beat Nikki Bella as well. You need to have Nikki Bella winning a feud at some stage prior to losing to Emma. Potentially that can be the number one contenders, like Nikki Bella versus Emma, because everyone will think, oh, well, Nikki Bella's still a genuine contender for a title, to be in a title feud. And Emma deserves to be in a title feud, and her and Becky Lynch will put on some good matches. I think Emma will be champion come WrestleMania, or at WrestleMania time.
Interesting. I'll give you a C plus for that one.
Yeah, I'll give you a D for Elias Sampson.
I just think that whatever the SmackDown Women's Championship match at WrestleMania is, it has to differentiate itself from Raw. Well, Raw will be that one-on-one match between Sasha and Bayley, you assume.
Okay, well then, what? So you're suggesting maybe a triple threat?
No, it doesn't have to be a triple threat.
Or it could be Becky Lynch versus Emma versus a tweener, Nikki Bella, where you don't know if she's heel or face.
I was thinking Becky versus Asuka, to be honest, because that's how you differentiate it. You have an undefeated Asuka coming out of NXT, still undefeated, comes into SmackDown, straight into the main event scene, and you have Becky fighting from underneath to try and hold onto her title. You can build that from the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania with Asuka and Becky never having a match. And sort of Asuka just beating Becky at every turn, beating everyone else on the roster. And
heel or face?
Heel Asuka.
Heel Asuka.
Because as a babyface, then you have to rely on her cutting promos. As a heel, she doesn't have to say a word, in my opinion. Because Asuka's facial expressions are better than everyone.
That makes sense. I guess I'd like to see Asuka. Depends what happens with Paige.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if they could maybe shift Paige to SmackDown. I was thinking Asuka should go on Raw.
Yeah.
And provide a genuine, so they can have 4 real women fighters that are genuine title contenders, because Raw's a longer show.
Yeah.
So Raw needs that. It'd be good to see Paige maybe SmackDown, because no one really knows that Paige's on Raw at the moment.
Well, she was drafted.
She was drafted, but no one. If you ask someone randomly, because the draft was 2 months ago, no one remembers that Paige was drafted to Raw.
You could use it as a storyline and say, "Hey, Paige has been disgruntled with Raw for not being on the show, and she's moved to SmackDown." But at the same time, imagine her being really upset about not being on SmackDown with Del Rio. Del Rio leaves the company, and then they move her to SmackDown.
That's something WWE would do.
That is something WWE would do. That would be an absolute dick move. And I guess the other thing is, Emma has been appearing on a lot of Raw house shows as a guest referee.
Yeah.
So we don't know whether she'll actually be coming to Raw.
Swerve. Could be a swerve.
That would be interesting. I think that's giving WWE too much credit, though, to be honest. Anyway.
That's true.
We'll leave it there, Book City, for this week.
I deserved more than a C+.
I don't know, considering you picked up probably a Raw superstar to compete for the SmackDown Women's title. Anyway, we'll move on to our 4 issues for the week. And since you're on a roll, I'll give you the first one. You want to talk about the booking of Raw and SmackDown.
Yep, so that is the main difference between the two brands, the two shows, is the booking at the moment. And we've discussed it, obviously, so far, so this won't be too long. But SmackDown's booking has been fantastic. You're invested in pretty much all the feuds. All the matches that will happen at No Mercy are things that you want to see the matches because they've been built up. You know what to expect. You know the story behind them, and they've got momentum.
Yeah.
And that's what you want from a show. And it's got a lot to do with there being less wrestlers, so there's more time on SmackDown. But that is just smart booking. I'll tell you what, and I know you don't really care for him, I think Kurt Hawkins has been smart booking. Now, I don't know. Look, I don't know what they're going to do with him. He'll probably be a jobber. It can't be a jobber. He has to come in and... If he could be something like like a poor man's Chris Jericho in terms of a funny heel that is there, because he's a talented wrestler.
Yeah.
But he's also he's funny. So
I would love to see his vignettes just going for another 3 or 4 months. Just don't have him on the show at all. Just have him do one vignette every single week for 3 or 4 months and make that like a gag, as if he's saying, "I will be debuting soon," and then just have the vignettes just keep going. I think that would be hilarious.
I feel like they did that with someone anyway. But anyway, I think that has been smart booking with Kurt Hawkins. And I guess they try and build him up as that funny heel sort of persona.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's a heel. There's nothing suggesting he's a face.
I can see him debuting in the undercard of No Mercy.
Yeah, okay. You reckon?
Just like a jobber match.
That soon?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe he can feud with Jack Swagger after Baron Corbin demolishes him. But I think that's smart booking. You look at Raw, what has been smart booking? Which part of it has been smart? Roman Reigns versus Rusev, potentially only because there's continuity in it. That's the only continuity that we've seen, but I wouldn't say it's good booking.
No, because Rusev got absolutely destroyed at Clash of Champions. He lost twice in one match.
Yeah.
He essentially lost twice, because if Lana hadn't pulled the ref out of the ring, that would have been match over.
So it doesn't make sense, but that is probably the best thing going. Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins is obviously a good match, but that feud hasn't really been great either, because we're all waiting for Seth Rollins versus Triple H.
And we haven't seen Triple H at all. So that's questionable booking. Kevin Owens is a champion, but he's kind of the sideshow
to the championship. And we all know that Survivor Series, it looks like Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho, potentially versus Seth Rollins triple threat, but that's what they're building towards, and that will be good booking. That will be a good feud.
Yep.
And that's one we want to see. But until that point, right now, we're not seeing much. Charlotte has got Sasha Banks and Bayley, and it's kind of all over the place, except, Charlotte's the best heel. And we've read things that potentially Dana Brooke. That will be the next feud.
Don't.
You see the tag team champions, Gallows and Anderson, got booked strong prior to losing twice in a row.
They beat the New Day clean on Raw.
Yeah.
And then got destroyed by them 2 weeks in a row. After
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row, yeah.
And, Gallows and Anderson, and it leaves you thinking, why? And as you said, you're fast forwarding through 2.5 hours of three potential hours of Raw.
Yeah.
Because of what? And Enzo and Cass are jobbers. I mean, that's the huge difference between the two. I don't care that it's 3 hours. There's more wrestlers, fine. And I'll talk about the Cruiserweight division afterwards. That's my second one. But that it's just SmackDown is being booked where you're invested in it. Raw already has the numbers, so I guess they're not putting as much effort into it for the time being. I can see that changing soon. I mean, by Royal Rumble time, they'll hope that they've boosted SmackDown up to a stage where they can have even booking. I think they've booked it for Raw to look a little bit weaker at this moment in time, but it just doesn't make sense where there's nothing good on Raw and almost everything's good on SmackDown.
Yeah, and that's obviously entirely to do with booking, because as we already mentioned, the talent on Raw is just so much more supreme. Like, you look at Superstars this week. The matches on Superstars featured Sami Zayn winning a match and Neville winning a match. Like, how are Sami Zayn and Neville on Superstars? Yeah. You have a 3-hour show and you can't work 2 of the best wrestlers in the world onto your show. And then you look at SmackDown and, like, you look at main event and you've got tag team wrestlers wrestling in singles matches. Like, I think it was Tyler Breeze and Apollo Crews. So, I just don't get it. Like, how can you butcher Raw this badly? And that actually leads perfectly into my first issue. And my first issue is I want to look at, since the draft, which wrestlers have been benefited most from the draft. So since the brand split, who has improved the most? And, like, off the top of your head, who has improved most from Raw? Who has benefited most on Raw from this brand split?
Potentially Kevin Owens for he's champion, but even then, I don't know if he's benefited from it. He's
only champion because Finn Balor got injured.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Like, I honestly, if you want to go to camelclutchblog.com in the next day or two, I've actually written up a full article about this and the top 10 wrestlers who have benefited most from the brand split. And I'll give you a bit of a spoiler here. There are 3 Raw superstars and 7 SmackDown superstars on this list. And
who are the Raw superstars?
I've got Chris Jericho at 9 simply because he hasn't really benefited, but the extra spotlight has allowed him to, do his shtick.
Well, he's been the best part of Raw every week.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I've got him on the list. I've got Sheamus on there, as we talked about earlier, simply because he wouldn't have been on the show whatsoever without this brand split. And then I've got Kevin Owens because, he's the Universal
champion. Yes.
So that's fair enough.
But when you break it down, it just, potentially Sami Zayn and Chris Jericho could be the best feud at the moment, only because Sami Zayn's going to be put over.
You'd hope so.
Soon. But, I mean, yeah, it's really strange what they're doing, and you can't really name any.
No one right now is better off on Raw, is objectively better off on Raw right now than they were before the brand split, with the exception of probably Kevin Owens. And he's only there because Finn Balor got injured. Yeah. So it's absolutely, like, insane how poorly Raw has been booked. When you look at SmackDown, there are probably 10 or 11 guys who have been made to look like bigger stars now than they were before the brand split. Like, if you even look at guys like Apollo Crews, who has lost a lot of matches, but he's been put in that spotlight. Guys like Jack Swagger, who never would have been in a mid-card feud prior to the brand split.
No. And I assume your number one is Miz?
No, I've got Miz at 2.
Okay.
I've got Heath Slater at 1.
Okay. Yeah,
because, Slater was still in this...
Exactly. Even then, Heath Slater and Rhino.
Yeah.
Rhino was in NXT, okay, turning up occasionally. It's tag team champion.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing, and people deserve to be in these positions. These wrestlers, and SmackDown has given an opportunity. Even AJ Styles, I think AJ Styles was already unbelievable.
Yeah, I've got him right at number 10 at the bottom, just because he was always probably going to get there.
But he's the champion. He's you've got guys all over the place. I want to see Tyler Breeze and Fandango.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest disappointment. SmackDown had little they've been used.
and they should be used more, and you'd like to really see them used more. Potentially, Heath Slater, Rhino will feud with them before splitting up at some stage. Even the Usos. I mean, they're heel now, but it's given them an opportunity to change up.
They were the most stale people on the roster before the split.
And I like the Usos.
Yeah,
and this brand extension, they wouldn't have done it if it was on Raw, or it would have got lost in the shuffle and all that sort of thing.
It wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't have happened.
And SmackDown, and the fact that your issue is the most improved.
Yeah.
The 2-hour show is improving everyone more than the 3-hour show, where logically that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they have less time and less superstars, but they've had more superstars benefit from that lack of time. It doesn't make sense. And if you look, Heath Slater is the perfect example. Like, if you look at SmackDown after the draft, you go, okay, so American Alpha and the Usos are going to be feuding for the tag team titles for
which is what we thought.
4 or 5 months. Like, you've got them as the 2 best teams. They'll just be doing that. No, they've got creative. They threw Slater and Rhino together. They had that beautiful story of Slater getting signed. And now they have got Slater and Rhino temporarily probably filling that spot as tag team champions, allowing the Usos time to build themselves up as heels, allowing Gable and Jordan to have their own little thing with, Gable's injury, which I think they need to rule him out for 2 or 3 weeks now just to build that up.
Yeah.
You've got, underneath of that, they've probably dropped the ball a bit with the other tag teams. Like, the Ascension got their first win since February. Good for them. But, like, the Vaudevillains are dead. Breezango haven't been spotted, and I think Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley might need to enter the singles division, to be honest. But other than that, like, the other guys I've got on this list here, you've got The Miz, obviously, who's benefited most simply because of the spotlight. They've given him an inch and he's taken a mile. So I had him as the second most improved person, or not even most improved, but like they've taken the spotlight that's been given to him since the brand split and turned it into one of the top things on the card.
You give him a centimetre and he creates a kilometre. You can use Australian.
Fair enough. Dolph Ziggler, obviously. I mean, before the brand split, he was losing to Baron Corbin, and now here he is in a WWE World Heavyweight Championship match, and now the hottest feud on the roster with The Miz. I think Becky Lynch is probably the only female competitor that didn't come up from NXT who has benefited from this brand split. I think Charlotte is exactly where she was, Sasha is exactly where she was, Bayley is where she should be.
But
she came up from NXT. Alicia Fox, probably you can say she benefited because, she was actually on Raw.
Slightly,
Yeah. Summer Rae hasn't appeared at all.
Dana Brooke. She's got spotlight on her, though.
She's still in the same position, though. Like, she's still Charlotte's sidekick, to be honest. And she's crap, so I don't want to give her credit for anything.
Hi, Dana.
Naomi's probably benefited. Again, this is SmackDown good booking, though. So Naomi's benefited from this new gimmick, though she's still kind of a jobber. Natalia's in the same position. Becky Lynch is really the only one who has gone from, upper mid-card feuding with Natalya, losing to Natalya at the last pay-per-view before the brand split.
Let's not talk about that.
And now she's the SmackDown Women's Champion. And, like, who's getting bigger pops than her on SmackDown right now? What, like, Cena, obviously. Ambrose, maybe, about the same.
Yeah.
Who else?
AJ,
yeah, but I guess he's a heel.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's still getting the big pops. Becky's probably in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So, like, she's definitely the one who has benefited most from this brand split, and she's taken every opportunity they've given her.
You're glowing.
Oh, she's been my favourite wrestler for 2.5 years, so I'm happy for her. But you know what I mean? Like, SmackDown, they've just used their time so much better, as you've said, and this good booking, and it's allowed them to have these 7 or 8 superstars who have all grossly improved since the split, whereas Raw, you could barely name one.
Yeah, exactly. And quite frankly, you could probably add Raw's booking and Raw's improvement as superstars on the list of Jericho because it's just not doing its job. Maybe by design, but...
I hope it's not by design. I mean, you can't kill off 60% of the roster just to make SmackDown look a little bit better.
You'd hope not, but you wouldn't put it past WWE.
Well, speaking of their booking, your next issue is the Cruiserweight division.
I know it's only been 2 weeks.
You're worried about it?
It's been on for Cruiser. Well, I'm worried about it from the crowd sense.
Yep, same.
The crowd is chanting CM Punk chants in 2016, which is absolutely
angers me.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
Yep.
Was it Randy Savage chance? Macho Man? What, I don't know whatever it was. No one's everyone's sitting down and watching the cruiserweight division. The cruiserweights are the best wrestlers on the roster, arguably. I mean, there's Rollins and there's Sami Zayn and all them, but
yeah, I would probably say Brian Kendrick's probably the best wrestler on the roster right now.
Okay, well, I wouldn't. I don't think he's that good. But
I don't
anyway,
know that highly.
But the cruiserweight division, I think it's been booked alright. I don't have a total issue with the booking per se, but the crowd, and I think the issue is that they've been in two cities that notoriously aren't great crowds.
Yeah,
they're not receptive when they're not. They do their own thing.
Yeah,
and that's. I mean, you had to start the cruiserweight division now because that timing.
Because Raw needed something.
Well, yeah. But, like, TJ Perkins didn't get a huge... occasionally when they do a really cool reversal, then the crowd pops a bit. But otherwise, it's almost silence until they chant for CM Punk. And it doesn't make sense. I mean, you've got TJ Perkins, who has been interviewed more times than anyone in the history of the WWE.
He's just happy to be here.
Yeah, even though he's naturally like a cocky heel. That's his natural persona. But he's been interviewed like 3 times per night.
Yeah, I think the issue
it's to get exposure and for people to recognise him, which is fine. Then you got Brian Kendrick, where people pop for him because they know him,
and he's probably the only character in the cruiserweight division who actually has a sense of character. Like the rest of them are just like either generic face or like
happy heels or. You got Cedric Alexander, who I think the crowd does like Cedric Alexander. He's naturally like. He's going to be a megastar.
Yep.
Genuinely, him and Apollo Crews are 2 guys where I think that Apollo Crews isn't quite getting that push and that, that reaction, but those 2 are guys, they're similar sort of wrestlers, but unbelievable.
Yep.
Cedric Alexander's going to be a star. But it's an issue that they're blooding the likes of Drew Gulak and Tony Nese when we know Jack Gallagher, Noam Dar, Akira Tozawa, I think they're all part of the cruiserweight division, and we know they are. We know Gargano and Ciampa were advertised as part of it.
Yeah, I think they're just finishing up their indie bookings and they're coming in.
So it's, I mean, the booking's partly to do with it, the crowd's partly to do with it, but it's not getting the momentum it needs.
No, it can't, because you can't debut 7 or 8 guys and expect the crowd to go.
Which is what we said. Them. I mean, we said this, and I'm glad Tony Nese was on. Right, I don't think Gulak and Nese are part of WWE.
I think they might be actually. I don't know. If they are, then it's I don't get it because there's just too many superstars.
Nese is an absolute. I love Nese, like Tony Nese. He's great. Yeah. Have him on NXT. We've discussed this. Have someone SmackDown or have him on NXT.
Yep.
NXT needs a couple of other people to build up as stars and get them to the top. Yep. It doesn't make sense to have 12, 15, 17 cruiserweights and to have debuted there's been 8 or 9 over the past 2 weeks.
Not to mention,
and you've got Neville who's not doing anything.
Yeah, Neville, Sami Zayn, and Sin Cara all fit under the cruiserweight weight limit, and none of them will be used there because they've got 15 guys there.
It's an issue. It's an issue it's a Raw issue, it's a WWE issue, and it's one that it's great to have a cruiserweight division, but you shouldn't just have it on Raw in terms of if you're going to have so many guys, don't sign all the guys. Or acknowledge that you can have half of them on NXT, build them up as stars, so then when they come up to WWE, then those other guys, like Brian Kendrick, doesn't have to be necessarily cruiserweight. He can move on to something else.
Yeah.
And have...
Use Gargano and Ciampa in the tag team division. Raw needs tag teams right now.
Exactly. TJ Perkins can move on to become, fighting for a US title or just in a mid-card feud. Because these cruiserweights don't need to be pigeonholed into a cruiserweight division. Because in the future, they can become the world champions. They can become... US, IC, whatever. But in debuting 9 at the same time,
it just doesn't
in
work.
having it in places where the crowd's not receptive and the crowd doesn't care, in having him with not much exposure where NXT would help them, will do the world of good for most of them, it just doesn't make sense.
I think they made the wrong decision with the champion too. I honestly don't think TJ Perkins was the right call as the cruiserweight champion. I don't think Grand Metalik was the right call either. I think if they knew that they were going to be putting the Cruiserweight Championship on the winner of the tournament, it had to be either Cedric Alexander or Johnny Gargano. It couldn't... TJ Perkins is good. I don't think he has the natural charisma as a babyface.
He doesn't have the face charisma.
He doesn't. And, I just don't think he's almost like the, I don't want to say, the Hulk Hogan, eat your vegetables and take your vitamins, but that's how he's coming across. He's almost like I've worked from the bottom and now I'm here. I'm just so happy to be here. Like, Cedric Alexander just has that natural charisma. Johnny Gargano's an established guy in NXT.
Rich Swann's entertaining to watch.
I think they've made the wrong call with TJP as the Cruiserweight champion. I think he would have been a great part of the division, and he has the look.
He should be a heel.
He just shouldn't be the Cruiserweight champion. I just don't see how they decided to put it on someone who had no foundation with the fan base, because the Cruiserweight division was always going to end up like the Divas Revolution, as we've said on probably 4 shows now. You can't have that many people debuting faceless.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work.
And Grand Metalik would have been worse, like by far worse.
Yeah,
because it wouldn't connect to the audience.
No.
And these guys are great wrestlers, like, and you enjoy the work that they do.
Yeah.
Cedric Alexander, Brian Kendrick should have won the tournament. I think Brian Kendrick should have been the champion. Should have won the tournament.
Yep.
And then when they awarded him with the title, he can rip the title off Triple H and go, yeah, because I deserve it. You didn't believe in me, blah, 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 blah. Something like that. Then you can have that face come in as the...
Yeah.
Even Neville could have... You could have had Brian Kendrick Neville as the opening to the Cruiserweight where you know both guys, and it gives you time to build up other...
Yeah.
Like the other ones, while experienced and exposed guys wrestle for the title.
At this point, you haven't had Jack Gallagher or Noam Dar on Raw yet whatsoever. So I would just be putting them on SmackDown. Just pretend that they weren't ever a part of Raw. Put them on SmackDown or just leave them in NXT. Noam Dar and Jack Gallagher are probably the 2 youngest.
No, Jack Gallagher is like 30, but
okay.
Noam Dar needs to... Noam Dar should be on NXT because he's 22, 23.
Yeah, and you don't need them. You don't need them. What can you do with them now anyway? Like,
you could only hurt them.
Yeah, because you've already...
Particularly Noam Dar.
Yeah, you've already hurt guys like Lindsay Dorado,
who's got the stupidest mask I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that. Tony Nese, Drew Gulak, they've already been established as, okay, this is the undercard of the Cruiserweight division. They're going to be the guys that take losses. You've got guys like Rich Swann, Cedric Alexander, Brian Kendrick, and TJP, who are probably the upper part of that. But how can you invest in guys when you've never heard of them before? It just doesn't make sense, especially when there's just so many. I honestly agree. I think it
stinks of the Divas Revolution.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue for the WWE right now, and they've booked themselves into a corner by having the Cruiserweight division exclusively on Raw instead of...
They could have had a floating championship. We discussed this as well. I wouldn't have minded a floating, because it would have allowed them more exposure on both brands.
Yeah, I think the Cruiserweight division needs to be 5 guys at most, not double what it is. I think it needed to be...
Well, I think a floating one would have been better. I don't think you can build up a whole division and have 4 or 5 guys.
No, you can, because then you can have TJP, Grand Metalik, Brian Kendrick, Cedric Alexander, and maybe Noam Dar. Leave the rest in NXT. Use Neville and Sin Cara and maybe even Sami Zayn in there, and that's all you need. You don't need 12 guys in a division. If you're going to do it, then bring them up at the end of the year. Slowly drop Drew Gulak in, drop Tony Nese in, drop Lindsay Dorado in. You don't need them all there at the same time. It just doesn't work.
They need to do something to build up interest. And I mean, we're interested, obviously.
Yeah,
but the casual fans or the WWE fans, rather than the NXT fans as well, just those that focus on WWE, it's a worrying sign for guys that deserve much better. Yeah, and I think another part of that is someone you look at NXT right now and go, okay, these guys are debuting. Why weren't they in the Cruiserweight Classic? You look at Andrade Cien Almas, who has completely floundered in NXT simply because the crowd just don't give a crap about him because he has no personality. You debut him under his mask in the Cruiserweight Classic. Get him to lose 40 pounds, but yeah. Oh, is he overweight? It's 245. Oh, is he? I'm pretty sure he is. I swear, I've heard people say that he should have been part of the Cruiserweight. But yeah, I guess that might be. He's 6'3", but yes, he lost his mask in Mexico. I'm pretty sure. Okay. I don't know if they took him. I'm pretty sure they unmasked him because the vignettes are all about him. I saw, yeah, but I mean, yes, and he's good in the ring, so you need. It just doesn't make sense. The Cruiserweight division, if we're going to sum it up, is too big. They can't use them all, and it's just letting guys like Sami Zayn and Neville flounder on superstars. And Raw has too many superstars, and SmackDown doesn't have enough. And just quickly before we finish the show today, I'm going to go through my second issue just briefly, and I'm going to focus on something that I don't think has gotten enough credit since it launched 2 or 3 months ago, and that's WhatCulture Pro Wrestling. I know you haven't watched much of it, if any. I have watched some. Yeah. I've watched it from day one.
It started a bit slow, but that's fair enough considering, they're launching a wrestling company. There's going to be some, you know, teething issues. But since about the end of July, they've delivered 5 or 6 consistently good shows. Each show has been better than the last. The character build-ups have been great. The main event scene has been a really interesting storyline. The undercard has been really good. The women's stuff has been a bit lacking, but other than...
Is there only 2? Is there still only 2
There's been
wrestlers?
4.
Okay.
4 used. But yeah, I think it's been really well done, and I don't think they're getting enough credit for what they've put up. Because if you look at the main event scene, like, you have the whole thing with Rampage and Big Damo, which you had a double turn in there. You had an injury angle. You had the pile driver being banned and that being an angle. Like, there was just so many little subtleties that just made for some really good booking. The idea to put the WhatCulture title on Joseph Connors was a swerve that nobody saw coming, but it's been a brilliant move because then you can feud with him and Joe Hendry.
Yeah, because he turned heel in the middle of the match, didn't he?
Yeah.
On Joe Hendry.
It was,
they were tag team.
You can almost see the Adam Blompier marks on it because you watch his videos on YouTube and you see him go talking about all these how he should book, and the idea of someone turning heel mid match is like something that I'm pretty sure he's used before. So it was really, really cool to see that. The guest appearances by guys like Will Ospreay and Marty Scurll and Damien Sandow, soon to be Kurt Angle and Cody Rhodes. They've added to the card. They haven't taken away from what the actual main storylines are. They've just added to them. The evolution of the greatest professional wrestler of all time, Martin Kirby, has been amazing.
Martin Kirby's the greatest thing to ever happen to. I know King Ross on WhatCulture. It's his favourite wrestler.
I don't like King Ross. I'll just say that right now. But anyway,
but Martin Kirby's hilarious.
I love Martin Kirby, and I think it's just a testament to how good a wrestling show can be with just simple, clean, good booking. Like, going into watching WhatCulture Pro Wrestling, I had heard of 2, maybe 3 of their wrestlers on their main roster, and like, I was going in without any knowledge, and now they've turned it into a show where you want to see certain guys, like, you know who they are. They've built up. It's almost like we're talking about the Cruiserweight division. They were going in cold. The crowd probably knew about a few of them from like the British wrestling scene, and of course you're going to know guys like Kurt Angle and Damien Sandow and etc. But like guys like El Ligero and Martin Kirby and Pete Dunne and all these guys who nobody had on this side of the world had ever heard of, but now in 5 or 6 shows they've turned them into established guys, and it's just a testament to how good their booking has been. So I just wanted to give that a quick mention as my second issue for the week. Yeah,
it's been good to see, good to see us Marty Scurll and all that, where we don't really get to see much of them.
Yeah.
Because of their independence.
He's coming to Australia though at the end of October.
Scurll.
Melbourne City Wrestling.
Well, he's the best. Isn't he the best heel? I don't know what his moniker is, but he's
the villain.
Yeah, that's it. The villain.
Marty Scurll.
He wears those glasses there.
As the umbrella. So good.
I guess the making of Martin Kirby was he beat Will Ospreay, which was like
that's amazing.
It's like, who would have seen that coming?
The best feud in pro wrestling right now is Martin Kirby versus Adam Pacitti.
When he had to read out his name at the start of the Rumble that they had, and even having EC3 in that Rumble, where they did WWE moves like famous, legendary. It's been well booked and it's been put together really nicely, and the pay-per-view that's coming up, I mean, it'll be good to see.
Yeah, the pay-per-view. That looks like a really good card too, to be honest.
It does. So, kudos to WCPW, who are providing a better product than Monday Night Raw at the moment.
They have the potential to be the second biggest wrestling company in the world. Like, if you look at what they're doing and their viewership on YouTube already, like, once TNA goes under, which it will very soon, WCPW have massive potential considering, like, they have, 900,000 subscribers on YouTube right now?
Yeah.
Like, it's a big platform. They could seriously do well here, and I can't wait to see where it goes over the coming years.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap it up for episode 5 of the Glorious Wrestling Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. You can follow the channel on Twitter at GloriousWP, and please subscribe to us on YouTube. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we uploaded the show in bits. I think we're just going to put this one up as the full show this week. So you can follow us, as I said, on YouTube at Glorious Wrestling Podcast. You can follow Dem on Twitter
at Dempy_9.
I'm not sure why you would want to follow him, but yeah.
Quality, that's why.
You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Negropontis, and make sure that you spread the word so we can get this podcast building up nicely. So thank you for tuning in for this week. And before we go, Dem, I have a question for you, just like I did last week with the biggest match of all time between Asuka and Liv Morgan. We are about to watch that now on NXT. What's going to happen?
Asuka is going to win.